People like you don't dine here. Try somewhere down the street." The words weren't a mistake. They were sharp, deliberate, meant to sting. The young hostess delivered them with the confidence of someone certain the room was on her side. And before the shock could settle, she ripped the reservation slip straight down the middle, the paper tearing like a sentence being handed down. The sound echoed against marble and glass. Gasps rose from nearby tables. A couple froze mid-conversation. Phones lifted. Screens glowed. In a matter of seconds, humiliation had become a spectacle. Across the counter, the woman in the navy suit didn't blink. No jewelry flashed under the light. No bodyguards flanked her sides. No designer handbag announced her worth. She stood alone, calm, steady, the kind of presence that didn't beg to be noticed but refused to be ignored. The hostess leaned forward, lips curled, voice low but loud enough for the waiting crowd to hear. "We're fully booked. No space for walk-ins, especially not you." The emphasis wasn't on the words "fully booked." It was on you. From behind the counter, the manager appeared. His stride was rehearsed authority, his smirk calculated. He glanced at the torn slip and shook his head. "Nothing under your name. If you really had a reservation, it would be here. Next time, pick a restaurant more suitable." The woman's gaze never shifted. She had lived this script before. At 22, when a hotel clerk told her card looked borrowed. At 29, when a dealership manager demanded proof she could pay before letting her test drive. Each time, her legitimacy questioned, her presence challenged. And now, years later, in a restaurant she had every right to walk into, her reservation lay in shreds at her feet. The lobby tightened. A server froze mid-step, tray trembling. A young waitress at the corner hesitated, biting her lip, eyes flicking nervously between her manager and the woman being dismissed. Diners whispered, unsure whether to intervene or enjoy the drama. A few raised phones higher, the red dots of recording lights glowing like quiet witnesses. But the woman in navy didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She let the silence expand, pressing down on the room heavier than any protest. That stillness unnerved them, the hostess, the manager, even the guests, because silence in the face of humiliation didn't read as weakness. It read as control. The hostess, unsettled, doubled down. She scattered the paper across the counter with a flick of her wrist. "Reservation denied. Move along before I call security." The woman tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable, her voice calm enough to unnerve every ear listening. "You just made a mistake you'll never recover from." For a moment, even the background chatter died. Forks stilled mid-air. Screens zoomed closer, and in that heavy pause, the power in the room began to shift. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to her. She stood at the counter, motionless yet commanding, while fragments of paper lay scattered like evidence. The humiliation had been public, but so would the reckoning. And it was only beginning. She hadn't chosen the navy suit by accident. It was deliberate, professional, yet unassuming, designed to blend in, not stand out. No flashy labels, no glittering watch, just clean lines and quiet authority. To everyone else in that lobby, she looked like a guest who had wandered into the wrong restaurant. That was exactly how she wanted it. Her name was Danielle Hayes, 42 years old, CEO of Hayes Hospitality Group, a billion-dollar empire that owned dozens of restaurants across the country, including the very one where she now stood, treated like an intruder. She'd arrived alone, without her assistant, without her usual driver. Tonight wasn't about appearances. Tonight was a test. A quiet audit of the place she had invested millions into, to see how ordinary guests, especially those who looked like her, were really treated when power wasn't printed on their business card. The test didn't take long to reveal its answer. The reservation had been made under her real name, through the restaurant's own online system, confirmed twice. No mix-up, no clerical error. She had even received the standard confirmation email that morning. Yet here she was, watching her name be ripped in half like it never mattered. Danielle's eyes swept the lobby. The chandeliers overhead cast a soft glow, but the mood on the ground was hard and brittle. Guests waiting in line shifted uncomfortably. A couple at the bar leaned closer, whispering. Phones hovered higher, lenses reflecting fragments of truth. And in that tension stood a single staff member who couldn't hide her discomfort, a junior waitress, no older than 22, clutching her order pad like a shield. Her eyes darted between Danielle and the manager, as if silently begging someone to stop this before it went further. She said nothing, but the weight of her hesitation hung in the air. Danielle inhaled once, slow and steady. She remembered being 20 herself, walking into a hotel lobby in Charlotte wearing her Sunday dress, waiting for her parents to arrive. The clerk had looked her over, frowned, and said, "Guests only." She had been escorted to the sidewalk like she was loitering. That memory had carved itself into her bones. And now, decades later, the words were different, but the dismissal was the same. The hostess crossed her arms, tapping one manicured finger against the counter, impatient. "You need to leave. We have real guests waiting." The word real hung like smoke, suffocating the air around it. Danielle didn't respond. Not yet. Her silence pressed heavier than any argument. The manager, mistaking composure for weakness, smirked as if he had won. But those who knew her knew what that stillness meant. It was the pause before the storm, the inhale before a verdict. And though no one in the room realized it yet, every second of arrogance was being logged against them, tallied, recorded, waiting for the moment she would choose to act. The manager didn't retreat. He planted himself at the counter, shoulders squared, eyes cold, savoring the spectacle. Around him, the lobby hummed with tension, footsteps slowed, conversations died, cameras stayed up. "Look," he said, his tone dripping with fake courtesy, "if you can't afford a mistake, maybe stick to places more accessible." His gaze flicked toward her shoes, then back to her face. The insult wasn't subtle. The hostess chimed in, emboldened by his presence. "We get people trying this all the time," she scoffed. "Flashy cards, fake names, hoping no one checks. Not tonight." She snapped her fingers toward the doorway, signaling to a security guard stationed nearby. The guard, a broad-shouldered man in his 30s, began walking over. Each step was heavy, intentional, meant to intimidate. Guests murmured. Someone whispered, "This is going too far." The junior waitress flinched. Her lips parted like she wanted to speak, but the manager's glare cut her down before a word escaped. She lowered her eyes, clutching the order pad tighter, her silence complicit but her body language screaming conflict. Danielle remained still. The torn slip of paper lay scattered at her feet, fragments catching the lobby light like shards of glass. She didn't bend to pick them up. She didn't argue. She let the pieces sit there as proof of what had been done. The manager leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough to sound menacing, but loud enough for the crowd to catch every syllable. "We know what you're doing. You don't belong here, and if you don't leave now, you're going to regret it." The word belong cracked through her chest like a familiar wound. She'd heard it at 29, in a dealership when a loan officer told her she didn't fit the image of someone who could finance a luxury car. At 36, when a venture partner assumed she was an assistant, not the one signing contracts. Now, at 42, she stood in a restaurant that carried her own company's nameplate on the door, being told the same lie again. Her silence wasn't submission, it was memory, layering over memory, becoming fuel. The hostess, misreading that calm as defeat, smirked. She gestured to the guard. "Escort her out. She's wasting everyone's time." The guard hesitated, not because he doubted his authority, but because of the dozens of eyes on him. Cameras recording, murmurs rising, the atmosphere was shifting. A middle-aged man at the bar muttered, "She hasn't even raised her voice." A woman next to him nodded, whispering, "And they're treating her like a criminal." Still, the manager pressed forward. He waved his hand sharply, impatient. "Do it. Now." The guard took another step closer. The air grew tighter, heavier, as if the entire lobby was holding its breath. Danielle didn't move, didn't flinch. She let the tension swell until it nearly broke. Then, calmly, she lifted her head, eyes steady, voice low but clear enough for the room to hear. "You're mistaking silence for weakness. That's your last mistake." The guard froze mid-step. Guests gasped. Phones tilted higher. And in that suspended moment, the balance of power began to shift. The lobby trembled with anticipation. The manager's order still hung in the air, yet the guard remained frozen, caught between command and conscience. Phones tilted higher, recording every twitch, every silence. Danielle didn't rush to fill the void. She simply let it expand, her stillness louder than any protest. Both hands rested lightly on the marble counter, her posture anchored, her breathing even. To those watching, it looked like composure. To those who knew her, it was something sharper, a strategy honed over decades of being underestimated. The hostess broke first. "Why are you just standing there?" she snapped, her voice higher than before, tinged with frustration. "I told you to leave." The words cracked, not like authority, but like panic clawing for ground. Danielle's eyes moved to her, slow and deliberate, a gaze so steady it seemed to drain the air from the room. She said nothing. Not yet. The silence unsettled them more than anger ever could. The manager shifted his weight, his smirk thinning. The guard glanced at the watching crowd, unease flickering across his face. Even the guests, once entertained, now looked restless, uneasy with the imbalance unfolding before them. Somewhere in the back, a woman whispered, "Why isn't she saying anything?" Another voice answered, "Because she doesn't need to." The junior waitress, still clutching her order pad, stared at Danielle as if willing her to speak. She had seen dozens of guests dismissed before, but none who held their ground like this. Her lips trembled with words unsaid, her conscience pressing against her silence. Danielle exhaled softly, her gaze sweeping the room. She remembered being 16, standing in a hotel lobby in Charlotte, told to wait outside because the space was for guests only. The shame then had been heavy, crushing, but it hadn't broken her. It had carved her into someone who could wield silence as a weapon. And tonight, she wielded it well. The manager slammed his hand on the counter, the crack echoing through the lobby. "Enough of this act. Security, get her out." The guard stepped closer, but slower this time, hesitant under the weight of so many watching eyes. Danielle didn't move an inch. Her stillness felt less like surrender and more like defiance. Finally, she spoke not loud, not sharp, but calm, her voice carrying across the space with surgical precision. "I'm not leaving, and you're not in control." The words were quiet, but they cut through the lobby like steel. The hostess's jaw slackened. The manager's smirk vanished. The crowd leaned closer, breath held. It wasn't volume that commanded the room. It was presence. And in that moment, Danielle owned every inch of silence they had tried to weaponize against her. The phones kept rising, tiny red recording lights glowing like fireflies in the dim lobby. Each second of silence stretched into evidence. Each breath became part of a case being built in real time. From the corner, a young man in a gray hoodie angled his phone higher. "This is wild," he muttered, voice low but carrying. "She just asked for her reservation, and they're treating her like a criminal." His friend whispered back, "Keep filming. People need to see this." At the bar, an older couple shifted uncomfortably. The man leaned forward, murmuring, "She hasn't raised her voice once." The woman nodded, her tone sharp with indignation. "And yet they're calling security. This doesn't look right." The junior waitress finally moved. Her sneakers squeaked against the polished floor as she took one hesitant step closer to the counter. Her order pad trembled in her hand, but her eyes burned with something stronger than fear. She opened her mouth, but the manager cut across her with a glare sharp enough to silence. "Not a word," he hissed, low but lethal. She froze, lips pressed tight, but her eyes betrayed her conflict. She had seen Danielle's name earlier that morning, glowing on the digital reservation list. Penthouse booking, confirmed. And now she watched as that truth was shredded literally in front of a crowd. Meanwhile, a young woman near the entrance raised her phone higher. "This is disgusting," she said to her live stream audience. "They just tore up her reservation slip. She gave her name and they're still pushing her out. Everyone here can see what's happening." Comments scrolled across her screen faster than she could read. "Not surprised. Typical. Name the restaurant." The security guard hesitated again, caught between his manager's command and the weight of dozens of eyes, dozens of phones. His hand hovered near Danielle's arm but didn't touch. The uncertainty in his stance was visible now, crackling like static in the air. Danielle's gaze swept over the crowd, calm, unbroken. She saw the waitress trembling, the guests whispering, the phones recording. She didn't need to speak yet. The room was already beginning to speak for her. Finally, the junior waitress found her courage. She raised her chin, voice shaky but loud enough to cut the silence. Her name was in the system this morning. Gasps rippled. Heads turned. The manager spun on her, fury flashing across his face. "What did you just say?" he demanded. The waitress flinched but didn't back down this time. Her voice steadied. "I saw it. Hayes. Table for two. Confirmed." The lobby erupted in murmurs. Guests exchanged looks, some nodding, some filming closer. The live stream comments poured in faster. They lied. She had proof. This is on them. Danielle remained silent, but her eyes softened as they met the waitress's. It wasn't gratitude. It was recognition, the spark of someone who refused to be complicit. The manager's face drained of color. The room, once under his control, was slipping with every word spoken by someone other than him. And still, Danielle hadn't raised her voice. She didn't need to. The witnesses were doing it for her. The murmur of the crowd swelled into something heavier, almost tangible. Phones hovered higher. The name Hayes echoed in the whispers, confirmation that the woman at the counter had told the truth. But the manager wasn't ready to surrender. He straightened, jaw tight, voice sharp as a blade. Enough. She doesn't belong here. Don't let her trick you. His hand slammed against the counter again, the sound cracking like a gavel, desperate to maintain order. The hostess joined in, smirking with renewed venom. "I've seen this scam before," she said, her tone loud enough to cut across the room. "People like her always think they can slip into places they don't deserve. Fake names, fake cards, fake status." A collective gasp rippled through the lobby. The insult wasn't veiled, it was open, brutal, and every phone caught it in perfect clarity. At the bar, the older woman who had whispered earlier stood now, her voice trembling with anger. "You don't get to talk to her like that." Her husband tugged at her sleeve, but she didn't sit down. "I've eaten here for 10 years, she continued. "I've never seen anything this shameful." The manager shot back, his tone dripping contempt. "Then perhaps you haven't been paying attention. Not everyone who walks in deserves a seat at this table." The words landed heavy, louder than the chandelier's hum, sharper than the clinking glasses. Even the guard shifted uneasily, his posture betraying hesitation. The junior waitress, voice still trembling, tried again. "Sir, I saw her reservation." "Silence!" the manager barked, cutting her down. His face flushed red, not with authority, but with panic leaking through arrogance. Danielle hadn't moved, not a step, not a word. Her hands still rested lightly on the counter, her eyes steady, absorbing every attack like a mirror, reflecting their ugliness back at them. Inside, memories flickered. The dealership at 29, the boardroom at 36. The constant question, "Do you belong here?" Each time she had answered not with rage but with results. Tonight would be no different. The hostess, emboldened by the manager's fury, leaned closer, her lips curled. "You're not a guest. You're a fraud. You're wasting everyone's time." She reached for the intercom on the counter, her finger hovering just above the button. "I'm calling the police." Gasps erupted again. Guests shifted in their seats. One man near the doorway muttered into his phone camera, "This is insane." "They're calling the cops on a paying customer." The live stream comments exploded. "Here we go. Classic playbook. Document everything." The intercom crackled as the hostess pressed down, her voice sharp and deliberate. "Security to the front. Possible fraudulent guest. Remove immediately." The announcement echoed across the entire lobby, bouncing off the marble walls like an alarm. But Danielle didn't flinch. Not once. Her silence, more than any word, was beginning to shake the very people who thought they held the power. And though they didn't realize it yet, the escalation had only brought them closer to their downfall. The lobby doors swung open. 2 more security staff stepped inside, their radios crackling. The manager's smirk returned as if reinforcements confirmed his authority. "Finally," he muttered, "let's end this circus." The hostess gestured toward Danielle with an exaggerated sweep of her hand. "That's her. She's the problem." Her voice carried across the room, turning the spotlight squarely on the woman in the navy suit. The taller guard stepped forward. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us." His tone wasn't polite. It was a rehearsed command, the kind used to remove trespassers. Danielle didn't move. Her hands stayed on the counter, her eyes calm, her breath steady. The stillness rattled them more than resistance ever could. The hostess scoffed, grabbing the shredded reservation slip from the counter and tossing it into the trash can nearby. "There," she said with finality. "Gone. No reservation, no proof. Just another scam." A wave of murmurs surged through the crowd. Phones zoomed closer, the red dots of recording lights multiplying. The manager leaned across the counter, his voice low but laced with venom. "You think silence makes you powerful? It makes you pathetic. Walk out on your own, or be dragged out." The shorter guard stepped in now, reaching toward Danielle's arm. Gasps shot through the lobby like sparks. A woman near the entrance shouted, "Don't touch her!" Another voice echoed, "This isn't right." Oh. The guard's hand hovered inches from Danielle's sleeve, hesitant, but under orders. The room tensed, every eye fixed on the space between his hand and her body. Then, the hostess delivered the final blow. Her voice, shrill with certainty, cut across the room. "People like you will never sit at this table." The words dropped like a stone in water, rippling through every corner of the restaurant. Guests froze. A fork clattered to the floor. The junior waitress's eyes widened with horror. Even the guards paused, stunned at the nakedness of the insult. The manager didn't correct her. He didn't flinch. He let it stand, his silence an endorsement louder than any word. Danielle's eyes rose slowly, locking onto his. No rage, no tears, just steady, unbreakable calm. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper, but it carried to every phone, every witness, every ear in that charged space. "You've just crossed a line you can't come back from." The silence that followed was heavier than the chandeliers above, heavier than the threat of security, heavier than the arrogance that had filled the room moments before. And for the first time, the crowd wasn't just watching. They were choosing sides. The words still hung in the air, poisonous and undeniable. The crowd was buzzing now, phones lifted, whispers swelling, outrage thick as smoke. The junior waitress stood frozen, jaw clenched, torn between fear and the truth she knew. Danielle finally moved. Slowly, deliberately, she reached into her blazer and pulled out her phone. The gesture wasn't hurried, not defensive, it was calm, rehearsed, like a step in a dance she'd performed before. The manager scoffed. "What now? Calling backup? Go ahead. See if anyone cares." His arrogance cracked at the edges, but he pushed harder, louder, as if volume could reclaim the control slipping through his fingers. Danielle lifted the phone to her ear. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet enough to seem private but clear enough to carry. "Initiate protocol." On the other end, a voice answered instantly, crisp and professional. "Confirmed. Timestamping and recording now. Do you want full escalation?" Every phone recording caught it. The sudden shift in tone, the precision in the assistant's response. This wasn't the voice of a friend or family member, it was the cadence of corporate authority. The manager blinked, caught off guard. What was that?" he stammered, his smirk faltering for the first time. Danielle didn't answer him. She never broke her calm. Her eyes swept the lobby instead, noting every phone raised, every witness locked in. "Yes," she said into the line. "Begin full verification. Lock the system." "Understood," the voice replied. "Audit in progress. All records secured." The junior waitress's breath caught. She recognized the terminology. It wasn't casual. It was internal language, the kind only executives used. The taller guard stepped back, uncertain now, his hand no longer reaching. "Ma'am," his tone had softened, almost respectful, but the hostess laughed, brittle and shrill. "Oh, please. You think talking on a phone makes you important? This is pathetic." She turned toward the crowd, trying to rally them back to her side. "She's stalling, that's all this island." No one agreed. The silence that followed was telling. Danielle lowered her phone slightly but didn't hang up. Her voice cut through the lobby, sharp and surgical. "Every second you continue, every word you say, is being logged against you. Choose carefully." The manager shifted again, sweat glistening at his temple now. His authority was slipping, fast, but pride kept him tethered. He barked toward the guard. "Don't just stand there! Remove her!" The guard didn't move. Not anymore. His eyes flicked to the phones, then back to Danielle. Something in his stance had changed. And Danielle, without raising her voice, had just shifted the balance. The crowd leaned forward as if the room itself knew something was about to break. Phones tilted higher, screens glowing. The manager's jaw was tight, his smirk long gone, replaced by a twitch of unease. The hostess folded her arms, trying to look triumphant, but her eyes flickered nervously at the silence surrounding her. Danielle finally lifted her gaze, steady and unblinking. She slid her phone back into her pocket with deliberate calm. Then, she spoke not to the manager, not to the hostess, but to the entire lobby. "You've called me a fraud. You've said I don't belong here. So let's clear this up for everyone at once." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The precision of her tone cut cleaner than any shout. I am Danielle Hayes, she continued, her eyes locking onto the manager, CEO of Hayes Hospitality Group, the owner of this restaurant. The name you just tore up? That was mine. The words detonated in the air. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone near the bar whispered, "Owner?" Another voice, shaky with disbelief, repeated, "She owns this place." The junior waitress's eyes widened with recognition, her lips parting in awe. She had seen the corporate newsletters, the photos of the founder, the woman who had built an empire from the ground up, and now she was standing here, treated like a trespasser in her own house. The manager staggered back a half step, his composure crumbling. No, that can't. But Danielle didn't give him the luxury of denial. She pulled her phone out once more, tapped the screen, and held it up. The restaurant's reservation system appeared, projected across the display. At the top of the list, highlighted in bold, Hayes, table for two, confirmed. Gasps turned to murmurs. Phones zoomed closer, capturing the proof. The live stream comments flooded. "She's the CEO?" They just humiliated their boss. "This is unreal." Danielle lowered the phone, her gaze never wavering. "Every witness in this room just heard you deny my reservation. Every camera captured you tearing it apart. And now, every one of you knows exactly who I am." The hostess's face drained of color, her arms dropping uselessly at her sides. The guard who had been reaching for Danielle stepped back fully now, his voice uncertain. "Ma'am, I didn't know." No," Danielle replied, her tone still calm but heavy with finality. "You didn't care to know." The lobby was silent except for the soft buzz of phones recording. Authority had shifted, unmistakably, irrevocably, and for the first time, the manager realized he wasn't looking at a guest he could dismiss. He was standing in front of the woman who owned everything around him. The moment landed like a thunderclap. Danielle's words echoed in the lobby, impossible to retract, undeniable to everyone who heard. For a few seconds, silence smothered the room. Then chaos began to spread. The manager's face drained to ash. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again, but no sound came out. His authority, once barked with confidence, had evaporated into thin air. The weight of every witness, every camera, pressed on him like a spotlight he couldn't escape. The hostess stumbled back a step, her arrogance collapsing into panic. She looked down at the trash can where she had thrown the shredded slip, as if somehow piecing it back together could undo what she'd done. Her lips trembled. I didn't know. I didn't—" The excuses strangled in her throat. The security guards exchanged glances, unease written across their faces. One adjusted his radio, his earlier aggression gone. The taller one finally spoke, voice subdued. "Ma'am, we weren't aware." His tone carried a weight of apology, but also fear of what it meant to cross someone with real power. The junior waitress stood frozen, order pad clutched to her chest, but unlike the others, her face didn't pale with dread. Relief flickered in her eyes. The truth she'd tried to defend had been vindicated, and now the entire lobby saw it. She exhaled, shaky but grateful. Around them, guests erupted. Some gasped audibly, others muttered in disbelief. A woman at the bar shook her head, whispering, "They humiliated their own boss." Her husband added, "I'll never eat here again." Phones captured everything, streams filled with comments, "She's the CEO. This is career suicide for that staff." Justice unfolding live. The manager tried to recover, voice breaking. "Miss Hayes, I didn't mean—" Danielle cut him off without raising her voice. "You meant every word, and the world just heard you say it." The hostess's eyes darted wildly, searching for escape. "Please, we were just following procedure." "Procedure?" Danielle's tone sharpened, though still calm. "Your procedure is prejudice." The hostess flinched as if struck. One of the guards stepped back fully, hands raised. He wanted no part of the fallout. The shorter one whispered, "She owns this place. She owns us." The realization hit like a wave. Every staff member in the lobby, every sneer, every insult, every order to remove her was now a recorded act of defiance against their own employer. The guests weren't passive anymore. Applause broke from a corner table, hesitant at first, then louder. A man with a phone lifted high called out, "This is what justice looks like." Others echoed, their voices carrying, turning the humiliation back on those who had tried to enforce it. The manager's hands shook visibly. The hostess stared at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The guards stood frozen, powerless in uniforms that now meant nothing. And Danielle, still calm, still steady, stood in the center of it all, unshaken. They had tried to erase her. Now they were the ones disappearing, swallowed by the weight of their own shame. Danielle let the noise settle, then raised her phone again. One simple gesture, and the room hushed. Even the applause quieted, curiosity overtaking outrage. She tapped once, and a voice came through the line, calm, efficient, waiting. "Yes, Miss Hayes. Orders?" The manager's face went pale. The hostess swayed slightly, her confidence gone, legs unsteady beneath her. Both guards stiffened like statues, suddenly aware that this wasn't just a guest with a complaint. This was the owner, and her word was law. Danielle's tone was steady, deliberate. "Effective immediately. Terminate the employment of the front desk staff involved in this incident. Revoke all system access. Freeze credentials." The line crackled, then responded, "Confirmed. Processing now." Within seconds, the manager's phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He pulled it out with trembling hands. The screen flashed access denied. He tapped again, desperate, but the message repeated. His face drained further as he realized he was locked out, his career evaporating in real time. The hostess's tablet chimed next. She swiped at the screen, but the system booted her out with the same red warning. Her breath hitched. "No, no, please." Her voice cracked, the arrogance of minutes ago replaced by begging. The taller guard's radio squawked once, then went silent. He tried to adjust it, but the earpiece buzzed with static, credentials already revoked. He turned toward Danielle, swallowing hard. "We just followed orders," he muttered, his voice small. Danielle's eyes swept over them, cold but unshaken. "You didn't follow policy, you followed prejudice." The junior waitress stepped back, hand over her mouth, eyes wide. But not in fear, this was vindication. She had spoken the truth, and now she was watching justice unfold. Guests erupted again. Applause, whistles, the flash of cameras. Someone shouted, "That's accountability." Another voice echoed, "This is how you end it." The manager tried one last desperate move, stumbling forward. "Miss Hayes, please, I can explain." Danielle cut him down with a single glance. "You had every chance to treat me like a guest. You chose to treat me like an intruder. And now, you're neither." The weight of her words crushed what little resistance remained. The manager slumped, shoulders caving. The hostess hid her face in her hands. The guards lowered their eyes, stripped of authority they no longer owned. And Danielle stood unmoved, the axis of the entire room, calm, controlled, delivering justice not with volume, but with precision. They had tried to throw her out. Instead, she had thrown them out permanently. The red glow of revoked access still flickered on the manager's phone screen when Danielle finally turned away from the counter. The room was silent, except for the steady hum of cameras recording. She looked at the junior waitress, the only one who had dared to speak truth. For the first time all evening, Danielle's eyes softened. She gave the young woman a single nod, small but heavy with meaning. Recognition, respect, permission to stand tall. Then Danielle faced the room, her voice calm but carrying like a verdict. "You told me there were no tables left. But the truth is, there's no place here for prejudice. Not anymore." The words landed like iron. Guests erupted into applause, some even standing. The woman at the bar clapped furiously, tears in her eyes. The young man live streaming shouted into his phone, "You're watching justice happen live. She owns this place. She just fired them, all of them." The manager tried to speak, but no one listened. The hostess slumped against the counter, defeated. The guards stood still, irrelevant now, uniforms nothing but fabric without power. Danielle didn't linger. She gathered herself with quiet dignity, lifted her chin, and walked toward the entrance. Her heels clicked against the marble, each step a drumbeat of authority. Guests parted like water, creating a path for her, some whispering words of admiration as she passed. One woman near the door caught her eye. "Miss Hayes," she said softly, "thank you, for all of us." Danielle gave her the faintest smile, then pushed through the doors into the night air. Outside, the city lights glowed, indifferent but steady, just like her. She breathed in once, exhaled, and let the weight of the moment settle. Justice hadn't been loud. It hadn't needed to be. It had been decisive. Final. Back inside, the crowd was still buzzing, Phones still raised, voices filling the space she had left. But Danielle didn't need to stay. The point had been made. The system had spoken. And as she disappeared into the night, the final words she left behind lingered in every ear, every recording, every headline waiting to be written. I don't need to film justice. I am the final cut. The doors closed behind her, and the story, hers, theirs, ours, was already echoing far beyond those walls.